Hey everybody, and thanks for clicking on this video and checking out my channel. So leading up to John Wick Chapter 3 at the end of this week, I'm looking back and revisiting the first two films of the franchise. We've already talked about the first film, John Wick, so now we are moving on and we're talking about John Wick Chapter 2. If you'd like to talk about this movie with me, I welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. Just comment all your thoughts and opinions down below in the comment section, and let's get a fun conversation going. And with all that out of the way, let's move on to the John Wick franchise and talk about John Wick Chapter 2. So John Wick Chapter 2 is once again directed by Chad Stahelski. When someone from his past re-enters his life to collect on an oath that John made him, John Wick, once again played by Keanu Reeves, must come out of retirement once again for one more job. So let's talk about the title first of John Wick Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is a perfect title for this movie. This movie picks up right where the last John Wick left off. I watched John Wick and John Wick 2 back to back, and John Wick 1 flows very well into John Wick 2. Movie picks up, he's looking for his car, and his car is at Viggo's brother's warehouse, which also makes him the uncle to Losef from the last film. So that really ties this movie in very nicely to the first film. You get a great action scene the minute this movie starts off. And from John Wick to John Wick Chapter 2, movie doesn't miss a beat, and it definitely feels like a continuation of the story. And Keanu Reeves as John Wick is once again fantastic. He might be better in this film than he even was in the first film. The movie kind of brings him back in the same way the first one did, whereas the first one he kills the dog, which is the last kind of memory and last connection to his wife that he has that sets him off on his revenge trip. In the sequel, they actually destroy his house with all of his memories of his wife, and that's the situation, that's the event that motivates him to go on his revenge quest in the sequel. But while this sequel starts off kind of feeling like familiar territory, kind of feels like it's doing kind of the same thing as the first one did, it does go in a completely own direction. It expands upon the world and goes more into the rules and the codes of the organization that John Wick the Assassin is connected to. They introduce a new thing called a marker, which is a blood oath that he made to someone else that he has to fulfill. It's kind of a rule that he has to fulfill this. And that blood oath marker is the reluctant way that John Wick is brought back into the assassination world that he left behind once before and tried to leave behind again. And there's a great moment where he's gathering up his guns, he's getting back into the assassin mode, he's putting on the suit, and right before he grabs the guns as he opens the box, he does this scream that they cut really abruptly short, and he just walks out in his suit and tie. It's a great cut. I love that cut. It's kind of like John Wick the person screaming in agony that this is something that he just does not want to do. He doesn't want to come back to this world. But once he's got that persona on, once he's John Wick the assassin and he walks out, he's full in, he's focused, he's on the job, and he's ready to fulfill his commitment to the blood oath. And it's another great way to get me back on board with John Wick, because he's going to be killing a lot of people in this movie. But the whole time, I know that this is not something he was looking for, he wasn't asking for it, and he's reluctant to do this. It just brings more of a sympathetic side to John Wick and gets me more on board with the actions that he's going to commit. And going with the action, let's talk about the action in this film. Because this movie has a lot more parties, a lot more assassins are going after John Wick in this movie, which makes the action set pieces and the action in this movie bigger scaled, and there's a lot more of it. This movie has a ton more action in it than the first John Wick does. And in some ways, I think it's even better shot and better choreographed than the first one was. You get some really nice, long, non-breaking shots that just go on for a very long time. Let you see everything, even the reloads and everything. It just makes the action feel more realistic, more intense. There's a fantastic moment where in the first film they talk about the story that John Wick has that comes with his reputation of how he was able to kill someone with a pencil, and in this movie they do an awesome action scene with a pencil, and the way that it's choreographed, the way that John Wick handles it, the way that Keanu Reeves pulls off the slickness and precision of John Wick and just the skill that John Wick has, you totally buy into the fact that this guy could kill someone with a pencil. And not only do you buy into it, you get to see it, and it is brutal, it is gory. This movie's more action-packed. It's also more brutal with its action and a little bit more intense with it than the first one was, which adds for a lot more exciting scenes. There's a really great suspenseful action scenes where John Wick is in this room with a bunch of mirrors, and there's someone in there with him who he's in a shootout with, and the mirror setting for this shootout, this action scene, is so great. It's so suspenseful. I love it, and I think it's very well shot and very well directed. And I really love how they play with the Continental building in this movie. There's a great fight that's happening between John Wick and one of the assassins, and then they fall into the Continental, and they stop the fight immediately because there's no killing allowed in the Continental. That's the one rule of the Continental. So John Wick and the assassin he was fighting just go and have a drink, and they just talk it out, and they talk about how they understand where one another is coming from, but they still have to kill each other. And just that Continental setting and the role that they have really makes for an interesting and unique dynamic that goes on during these conflicts with John Wick and all the other assassins, because they're all they know each other, they have a history together, they're buddy-buddy, but they're willing to kill each other at any moment if the price is right. And if it comes down to that. And that just makes it so much more exciting and more thrilling and suspenseful when you know that even if John Wick has a friend in this situation, that friend could easily turn on him. This movie also has a tad bit more humor than the first one does. It doesn't become slapstick, and it definitely doesn't become an action comedy. There's just a little bit more comedic quips between the characters than there were in John Wick. I found myself chuckling more in John Wick Chapter 2 than I was in the first John Wick movie. And John Wick Chapter 2 is my favorite John Wick movie thus far. It does do a couple of things that feel very familiar and similar to the first film, but then it does go on its own direction. It does do its own thing. It ups up the action. It ups up the suspense. Keanu Reeves as John Wick is once again great here. I love the action scenes in this film almost more than I do in the first film. And while the reason he comes out of retirement to go on his revenge trip may not be as emotionally investing as the dog getting killed in the first film, it's still a very good emotionally driven motivation for John Wick to have to go on his revenge mission, and it's one that I can still get behind and still root for this character on. The action is bigger and better, and there's a lot more of it, and I just have a really, really great time whenever I watch John Wick Chapter 2. And the way that this movie ends really sets up the third one quite nicely and gets me really excited to see what they have in store for John Wick Chapter 3. Anyway guys, that's all I have to say about John Wick Chapter 2 today. But what do you think about John Wick Chapter 2? Do you like it more than the first one, or do you prefer the original? Comment down below, let me know. I want to know all your thoughts and opinions about this movie. And are you looking forward to John Wick Chapter 3? I probably won't be able to see John Wick Chapter 3 till either Saturday or Sunday, so my review and talk for it probably won't be up till Sunday or Monday. But keep your eyes open for that if you'd like to come back and talk about John Wick Chapter 3 with me. Complete the John Wick trilogy. I'd welcome you to do so, and I'd love for you to do so. And once again guys, my name is Zachary Milne. Thank you for talking movies with me, and hope you have yourself a great day.